I'm going to be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, verse number 46 onwards. Panena te deva kata sudaya pravruddha bhaktya vishadashayaye vairagya saram pratilabhya bodham yatanjasan viyur akunta dishnyam panena te deva kata sudaya pravruddha bhaktya vishadashayaye Vairagyasaram pratilabhya bodham yatanjasan viyur akunta dishnyam. Both of you raised at the same time, so one of you can read.
Hare Krishna. Panena, by drinking, te of you, Deva, O Lord, Katha, topics, Sudhaha of the nectar, Pravruddha, highly enlightened, Bhaktya, by devotional service, Vishada Ashayaha, with a greatly serious attitude, Ye, those who, Vairagya Saram, the entire purport of renunciation, Pratilabhya, achieving, Bodham, intelligence, Yatha, as much as, Anyasa, quickly, Anviyuhu, achieve, Akunta Dishnyam, Vaikunta Loka in the spiritual style. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Translation and purports by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. O Lord, persons who, because of their serious attitude, attain the stage of enlightened devotional service, achieve the complete meaning of renunciation and knowledge, and attain the Vaikuntha Loka in the spiritual sky simply by drinking the nectar of your topics. So we saw in the verse number 42, there was the importance of the process of hearing. And when the process of hearing was mentioned, it mentioned about two qualities that one has to be very serious about this subject matter that they want to hear. They have to be attentive and very serious, right? And here we have seen the same thing. That's a, oh Lord, persons who, because of their serious attitude towards what? The process by which they drink the nectar of your topics. So the process of hearing has to be with a serious attitude. When the process of hearing is with a serious attitude, then what happens? They attain the stage of enlightened devotional service. Otherwise, one cannot attain the stage of enlightened devotional service. So if one wants to really progress in spiritual life and attain a good enlightened stage of devotional service, what is important is for one to have a serious attitude towards the process of hearing. And then attain the stage of enlightened devotional service, achieve the complete meaning of renunciation. Without having a proper understanding of devotional service, one cannot have real renunciation. Because when somebody understands proper devotional service, one is able to engage everything in Krishna's service. Otherwise, we start rejecting certain things and accepting certain things. But the real topmost form of devotional service is to engage everything in Krishna's service. Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yuktam Vairagyam Uchate. That is the real Vairagya. So there are two types of Vairagya that are being discussed by Srila Rupa Goswami in the Nectar of Devotion. He talks about Falgu Vairagya and he talks about Yukta Vairagya. Falgu Vairagya is a Vairagya by which we simply reject things based on, oh, this doesn't have connection to Krishna, so I reject this. Oh, this one seems to have connection to Krishna, I will accept it. Well, there's nothing wrong with it. But then the ultimate understanding is that there is nothing that does not have connection to Krishna. Everything has connection to Krishna. The only question is whether that thing we are able to favorably use it in Krishna's service. That is all is the thing. Otherwise, everything has connection to Krishna. There is nothing that does not have any connection. So the real meaning, the complete meaning of renunciation can be gotten only when one is enlightened in devotional service. And then the knowledge, renunciation and knowledge, and attain. Then what is the final result? The final result is attainment of Akunta Dishnyam, Vaikuntha in the spiritual sky. So he says, right from the beginning stage to the stage of becoming enlightened in devotional service to understanding the complete meaning of renunciation and getting full knowledge and attaining Vaikuntha, what is the process? The process is very simple, simply by drinking the nectar of your topics. So here again, it stresses on the importance of hearing of the nectarian topics of the Supreme Personality of Purport. The difference between the impersonalistic mental speculators and the pure devotees of the Lord is that the former pass through a miserable understanding of the absolute truth at every stage, whereas the devotees enter into the kingdom of all pleasures even from the beginning of their attempt. It's a very beautiful statement that Srila Prabhupada makes here. So he says the difference is that the mental speculators, the process is a very difficult process. Whereas for a devotee, right from beginning till end, the process is a process of, what does he say? All pleasures, even beginning of their attempt. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Rajavidya Rajaguyam Pavitram Idam Uttamam Pratyakshavagabham Dharmam Susukum Kartum Abhyayam. He says, I am giving you this knowledge of devotional service, Rajavidya. And this knowledge, don't think that even though it apparently looks simple, that it is some ordinary knowledge. This he says, Rajaguyam. It's the topmost secret that nobody knows. Srimad Bhagavatam in several places explains about the nature of devotional service. The nature of devotional service is that from the external, it looks very simple, so people will tend to ignore it. Oh, it looks very simple. So it cannot be a very serious process. That is what people think. Why? Because the process is very simple. Chant Hare Krishna and be happy. That's all is the process. The entire process of devotional service as given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very simple. Kirtanad eva Krishnasya mukta sangha param vrajet. One statement over. Kirtanad eva Krishnasya. Simply Krishna's name, take it up, and then you can go back to the world. And what does this verse say? Simply hear the nectarian pastimes of the Lord, you can go to Vaikuntha. Over. But people tend to think, how is it possible? Somebody says, just drink water. Now, Maharaj was giving an example on the similar topic when he was giving 2 days back Bhagavatam class. Somebody says, just drink water, all your disease will be gone. Will somebody believe that? So they think like that. Oh, it looks like a very simple process. So Krishna says, yes, from the external, it looks like it is a very simple process. But it is Rajaguyam, he says. Pavitram, it is completely pure. It's untouched by any mala, anything that is mundane. And then he says, Pratyakshavaghamam dharmam. This dharma, when you practice pratyaksha by your own experience, you can understand that it is susukum kartum, okay, that it is sushukam. It is pleasure. And that's what here Srila Prabhupada says. The devotee, where is it? Whereas the devotees enter into the kingdom of all pleasures, which is Goloka, even from the beginning of their attempt. So right from step 1, somebody comes to the temple, first visitor, first time to the temple. What happens? He is attending Kirtan there and he is dancing in the Kirtan, he is repeating. And then you ask him, are you happy? Are you stressed? No, sir. First class, it was very stressful. Nobody says that. Why? Because as soon as they come and hear the Kirtan and they're dancing in the Kirtan, they're having prasadam, they're experiencing happiness from beginning till end. There is no stress at all. They don't even have to hear philosophy. Simply hearing to Kirtan, hearing Katha, and then having prasadam and dancing with devotees is such a pleasurable way of doing things, right? So here he says, Susukum kartum abhyayam, that it is enjoyable. So the devotee has only to hear about devotional activities, which are as simple as anything in ordinary life. And he also acts very simply, whereas the mental speculator has to pass through a jugglery of words, which are partially facts and partially a make show for the maintenance of an artificial impersonal status. In spite of his strenuous efforts to attain perfect knowledge, the impersonalist attains merging into the impersonal oneness of the Brahmajyoti of the Lord, which is also attained by the enemies of the Lord simply because of their being killed by him. He says the impersonalists, to attain the Brahmajyoti, they have to go through such strenuous efforts. Whereas in comparison, if somebody simply in an inimical attitude comes in contact with the Supreme Lord, accepting the personality of Godhead or accepting him as an enemy, he also attains, impersonal realization, such as Shishupala or whoever, right? So it says the devotees, however, attain to the highest stage of knowledge and renunciation and achieve the Vaikuntha Lokas, the planets in the spiritual sky. The impersonalist attains only the sky and does not achieve anything tangible, transcendental bliss, whereas the devotee attains to the planets where real spiritual life prevails. And that happens how? With a serious attitude. The devotee throws away all achievements like so much dust, and he accepts only devotional service, the transcendental culmination. So what is required? The only thing that is required effort from us is that to have a serious attitude towards this. Oh, if something, Krishna says, Raja Vidya, Raja Guhyam. So if something very secretive is given to us, can we be casual about it? You have to be very serious about it. Oh, something very, top secret is given then, which means the top secret has to be handled in a very efficient way, in a very serious way, with a lot of attention and care, right? So that is what is mentioned. So with a serious attitude, the devotee throws away all achievements like so much dust, and he accepts only devotional service, the transcendental culmination. Text number 47. Tatha pare cha atma samadhi yoga bhalena jitva prakritim balishtam tvam eva dhiraha purushang vishanti teshang shramahasyan na tu sevayate.
Hare Krishna. Tatha, as far as apare, others, cha, also, atma samadhi, transcendental self-realization, yoga means balena, of jitva, occurring, prakritim, acquired knowledge, acquired nature or modes of nature, balishtham, very powerful, tvam, you, eva, only, dhiraha, pacified, purusham, person, vishanti, enters into, tesham, for them, sramaha, much labor, syat, has to be taken, na, never, to, but, sevaya, by serving, te, of you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Others who are pacified by means of transcendental self-realization and have conquered over the modes of nature by dint of strong power and knowledge, which means the jnanis and the yogis, also enter into you, but for them there is much pain. Whereas the devotee simply discharges devotional service and thus feels no such pain. Tasya sulabha partha. Krishna uses the word sulabha partha. He says this process of devotional service is sulabha. It's very easy. It's not so much pain. Where is that verse? Eight 14. Ananya chetaha satatam yomam smarati nityasaha tasyaham sulabha partha nitya yuktasya yoginaha. Says, for one who always remembers me without deviation, I am easy to obtain, O son of Pritha, because of his constant engagement in devotional service. So for the one who is engaged in devotional service, It is very easy. And I think in one verse before, he talks about how difficult is the other processes. Anyway, we can find out later. But so Krishna here in the Bhagavad Gita confirms, saying that, oh, Ananya Chetaha Satatam, for one who is serious, Ananya Chetaha, without deviation of mind, with a serious attitude. Same thing. Here he uses the words with a serious attitude. But in this Bhagavad Gita verse, he says, Ananya Chetaha Satatam, Yo Mam Smarati Nitya Saha, regularly. He says, Tasya Aham Sulabha. For him, it is easy to get me. That is what Krishna says. So the process of devotional service is a easier process, or rather with no such pain as that is experienced by a yogi or a jnani. In terms of a labor of love and its returns, the bhaktas or devotees of the Lord always have priority over persons who are addicted to the association of jnanis or impersonalists and yogis or mystics. The word apare, others, is very significant in this connection. Others refers to the jnanis and the yogis, whose only hope is to merge into the existence of the impersonal Brahmajyoti. Although their destination is not so important in comparison to the destination of the devotees, the labor of the non-devotees is far greater than that of the bhaktas. One may suggest that there is sufficient labor for the devotees also in the matter of discharging devotional service, but that labor is compensated by the enhancement of transcendental pleasure. So when one gets the transcendental pleasure that they derive in performing devotional service, they forget all that labor that they have done. It might look like, oh, it's so much, like for example, they call me, we have to go for kirtan. In Chennai, especially, if you have to go for a kirtan from one place to another, it takes 2.5 hours to go to just one place for a 1 hour program. So going 2.5 hours, coming 1.5 hour, 2 hours for a 1 hour program. But then when you do the kirtan and you are there with the association of the devotees and you have prasadam with them, the pleasure that you get, still you say, yes, that's good. But if it was something else, oh, who wants to drive 2.5 hours? Because somebody has called us, can you come and attend this function, that function? Who wants to go there for one? You go there, they will do some gossip there. We have to eat something. Going there and he will tell some reason and we'll stay home. So we will avoid those functions. But when it is a function where there is the transcendental glorification of the holy names of Krishna, even though apparently it looks like there is some pain in the process, we enjoy that pain because of the compensation of the transcendental pleasure that is derived out of the association with the devotees and the holy name. Right? We are ready to take that pain. In fact, we invite that pain because of the pleasure that it comes with, right? Unlike the others. But that labor is compensated by the enhancement of transcendental pleasure. The devotees derive more transcendental pleasure while engaged continuously in the service of the Lord than when they have no such engagement. In the family combination of a man and a woman, there is much labor and responsibility for both of them. Yet, when they are single, they feel more trouble for want of their united activities. So the union of the impersonalists and the union of the devotees are not on a par. The impersonalists try to fully stop their individuality by attaining Sajya Mukti or unification by merging into oneness, whereas the devotees keep their individuality to exchange feelings in relationship with the supreme individual Lord. Such reciprocation of feelings takes place in the transcendental Vaikuntha planets, and therefore the liberation sought by the impersonalists is already achieved in devotional service. So devotional service is complete. It is in no way deficient of what can be gotten from any other processes of spirituality. It's not that when somebody is in devotional service, he will not get the other. Like for example, if there is a yogi, when he attains the stage of samadhi, he attains some siddhis. For the devotees, the siddhis come and pay obeisances and say, I'm ready to serve you. The Ashtasiddhis are ready to serve the devotee. But the devotee never cares for those siddhis. He simply rejects them. He says, I don't want your service, right? Because I'm serving the Supreme Lord, who is the Ishvara of all these siddhis. He is Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna. He is the Ishvara of all siddhis. He is the Yogeshwara. He is the master of the mystics. Why do I need these siddhis? He can do all kinds of magic. Gaur Kishodas Babaji Maharaj, he was living in a very simple, he used to live near the, the rejected place of the town or the village, it's like the waste place, or the what do they call, the bathrooms and the toilets. That is where he used to live. Why people used to come and disturb him if he was somewhere else? Because they saw this is a filthy place, nobody used to come to him, so he preferred to stay in that place. But for him, nothing would disturb him. And he had so many siddhis. Gaur Kishodas Babaji Maharaj is supposed to have had all kinds of siddhis. All the Ashta siddhis were there with him. But when I look, which means what? He could do anything that he wants. Prakamya, what is it? Lagima, Mahima, and such kind of siddhis, he can do anything that he wants. He doesn't have to, he can become the smallest of the smallest, and he can disappear from the vision of everybody else. He could have done all of that, but he never used any of those siddhis. Why? Because these siddhis are dangerous. When we use and experience the power of these siddhis, we become so attracted to it and we become subservient to them later. So we have to be very careful. So the devotee is never interested in these siddhis. So a devotee is not short of anything in the performance of devotional service. He gets everything, whatever the others can get, or actually even much more. Or in fact, what they cannot get, a devotee can get, which is Krishna. Whereas, if you take the process of yoga or jnana or ashtanga or any of these processes, they cannot get Krishna without the assistance of bhakti. That is the difference. So the difference is, bhakti is not dependent on anything else, whereas everything else is dependent on bhakti to get Krishna as the goal. So the devotees attain mukti automatically while continuing the transcendental pleasure of maintaining individuality. As explained in the previous verse, the destination of the devotees is Vaikuntha or Akunta Dishnya, the place where anxieties are completely eradicated. One should not mistake the destination of the devotees and that of impersonalists to be one and the same. The destinations are distinctly different, and the transcendental pleasure derived by the devotee is also distinct from chinmatra or spiritual feelings alone. Text number 48. Tatte vayang loka sisrukshayadhya tvayanu strivir atmavihi sma sarve viyuktaha swa vihara tantrang na shaknumas tat prati hartave te. Mala Mataji is there.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Prabhu, can I read?
Yeah, go ahead, Mataji. Both.
Sorry. I forgot Mala Malini, sorry. You read Mataji.
Go ahead, Malini Mataji. You can read and then Mala Mataji will read. That's fine.
Thank you. Therefore, you are, Vayam, all of us, Loka, world, Sikshiksha, sake of creation, Adya, O original person, Tvaya, by you, Anusrishtaha, being created one after another. He Sma in the past, Sarve, all, Viyuktaha, separated, Swa Vihara Tantram, the network of activities for one's own pleasure. Na, not. Shaknumaha could do it. That. Pratihartave to award. Te, unto your. Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you.
Hare Krishna. Then he says, O original person, we are therefore but yours only. So which means finally they are coming to explain the conclusion that ultimately all of us are simply your servants. And as servants, what we are supposed to do, although we are your creatures, we are born one after another under the influence of the three modes of nature, and we have parted ways. How we have parted ways? If we are in the mode of goodness, then we go to the higher planets. If we are in the mode of darkness, we go down to the lower planets. If we are in the mode of passion, we are in the middle. Urdhvam gachanti sattvasto, madhye tishtanti rajasa, jaganni gunavrittista adho gachanti tamasa. Like that, we have been separated. Therefore, after the creation, we could not act concertedly for your transcendental pleasure. That we could not come in association as devotees to act for your transcendental pleasure. Right? Purport: the cosmic creation is working under the influence of the three modes of the external potency of the Lord. Different creatures are also under the same influence, and therefore they cannot act concertedly in satisfying the Lord. Because of this diverse activity, there cannot be any harmony in the material world. The best policy, therefore, is to act for the sake of the Lord. That will bring about the desired harmony. One example just comes up to my mind. Right? Now we see that the world is going through so many wars. Right? Everywhere there is war going on. We see that Russia is fighting with Ukraine, and all of this is going on. So when the Russians look at Ukrainians, they look at them as enemies. The Ukrainians look at Ukrainians, they look at the Russians, they look at them as enemies. And then we have our Kirtan Rasa festival, Kirtan Mela festivals. And there is a Russian devotee and there is a Ukraine devotee. Both of them are sitting together and doing Kirtan. Both of them are enjoying, both of them are hugging each other, they are paying obeisances to each other, they are perfectly in harmony. This is an example of that harmony that Srila Prabhupada is talking about in this purport, and what Srimad Bhagavatam is talking about, isn't it? We might see externally, because of our identification with a particular country or a race or a color or a language or whatever it is that we are. Like, for example, when Bangalore or Karnataka is fighting with Tamil Nadu for water. When a Bangalorean looks at Tamilian, he thinks as an enemy, and the Tamilian looks at a Bangalorean, he looks at as an enemy because of their identification. But devotees, when they come from Bangalore to Chennai for program, Rath Yatra festival or something like that, they are together jolly happily. They're not talking about water problem. They know the problem is much bigger than what the governments are. Right? That is the difference. So what is the real difference? Did the position of them being a Bangalorean or a Karnataka person or a Tamil Nadu person or a Ukrainian or a Russian change? It did not change. The same Ukrainian, they have in fact a Ukrainian passport and a Russian passport, so on and so forth. But what did change? Their identification with the self changed. That saying that, oh, I am your servant, I'm Krishna's servant, I'm a devotee. That one simple change of identification, what has it brought about? It has brought about harmony. Right? That is what we need to understand. So the problem of this material world, Prabhupada explains here, the cosmic creation is working under the influence of the three modes of external potency of the Lord. Different creatures are also under the same influence, and therefore they cannot act concertedly in satisfying the Lord. Swadihi kalatradishu bhauma ijjati. That when they identify themselves with any of these things as I, me, and mine, they have differences. And they act according to the differences. But when they have a proper understanding, then Brahmane kavi hastini suni chaiva swapakecha pandita samadarsha. That is the difference. The difference is that when they come to the platform of proper knowledge, they understand, oh, these are all just external bags. But the real identity is that we are all spirit souls, mamevam so jiva bhuta sanatana. That understanding comes. That is what makes the difference. So the best policy, therefore, is to act for the sake of the Lord. That will bring about the desired harmony. Now, the next question is, sometimes, even when we go to the temple, we might carry these baggages along with us. Initially, we are coming together as devotees. But then when we become a little bit old devotees, oh, I am ISKCON Chennai, they are ISKCON this thing, that thing, I am this Gaudiya Math, I am that. So those identities can also creep in and create disharmony, even amongst devotees. So even the devotee has to be very careful how one does not become eaten up by such identities. that ultimately we are all servants of Krishna. Right? We don't identify ourselves, oh, I belong to this group, I belong to that group. Ultimately, we are all trying to serve Krishna and please him, not the identities that we are carrying along with us. So why I'm mentioning this is we have to be careful. Sometimes we mock on the others who are not devotees. Just give me one moment. I need to take this. Right? But it is very easy for us to fall into that same trap of identity crisis. That I am so on and so. These are all North Indian devotees. I am all South Indian devotees. These are all Bengali devotees. We are all Tamil devotees. There used to be such differences that even among devotees, we identify ourselves in different ways. And that is dangerous. We have to be careful. That there is a possibility of us carrying these misidentities even after getting into the path of devotional service. That we have to be very careful. That is why Krishna gives this example of saying that Pandita is Brahmane, Kavi, Hastini, Suni Chaiva, Swapake cha Pandita Samadash. Why is he giving such a variegated list of identities there? It says Brahmane, Kavi, Hastini, Suni Chaiva, Swapake cha Pandita Samadash. None of that matter. The only thing that matters is that soul, and the soul is eternally a servant of Krishna. That's all matters. That is the perfect identity, and that identity is will what bring the desired harmony. No other identity. Right? It could be even if one identifies himself as a brahmachari, oh, I'm a sannyasi, that is also dangerous. That's why Rupa Goswami defines saying that sarvopadi vinirmuktam tatparatvena nirmalam. Nirmalam, tatparatvena nirmalam. There should be no mala of any identity that we are carrying from this material world. Our only identity is I am servant of Krishna. That is our only identity. Dasa dasanu dasa. That is the only identity. There is no other identity that we want to carry. So, O unborn one, please enlighten us. You've read this, right? Sorry, 49. Yavad bhalim teja harama khale yata vayang channam adhama yatra yato bhayeshang ta imehi loka bhalim haranto annam adhanti anuhaha. Mala Mataji, please.
Krishna. Yavat, as it may be, Balim offerings, they your Aja, O unborn one, Harama shall offer Kale at the right time, Yatha as much as Vayam we Cha also Annam food grains, Adama shall partake, whereupon Yatha as much as Obey Sham, both for you and for us, they all these he certainly Lokaha living entities, Balim offerings, Harantaha while offering Annam grains, Atanti eat Anuhaha without disturbance. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Translation. O unborn one, please enlighten us regarding the ways and means by which we can offer you all enjoyable grains and commodities so that both we and all other living entities in this world can maintain ourselves without disturbance and can easily accumulate the necessities of life both for you and for ourselves. Purport. Developed consciousness begins from the human form of life and further increases in the forms of the demigods living in higher planets. The earth is situated almost in the middle of the universe, and the human form of life is the intermediate stage between the life of the demigods and that of the demons. The earth is situated almost in the middle of the universe, and the human form of life is the intermediate stage between the life of the demigods and that of the demons. The planetary systems above the earth are especially meant for the higher intellectuals called demigods, They are called demigods because although their standard of life is far more advanced in culture, enjoyment, luxury, beauty, education, and duration of life, they are always fully God conscious. Such demigods are always ready to render service to the Supreme Lord because they are perfectly aware of the fact that every living entity is constitutionally an eternal subordinate servitor of the Lord. They also know that it is the Lord only who can maintain all living entities with all the necessities of life. The Vedic hymns, Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadhati Kaman Ta Enam Abhruvan Ayatanam Naha Prajanihi Yashmin Pratishtita Annam Adhame, etc., confirm this truth. In Bhagavad Gita also the Lord is mentioned as Bhuta Bhrit, or the maintainer of all living creatures. So, Srila Prabhupada says the human form of the life is the via media between either you can choose to become a demon, which means a non-devotee, a Vimukha Chetasaha, or we can turn into a Unmukha Cheta, which means a devotee. Demigod generally refers to somebody who has accepted God, right? So, that is the intermediary stage, he says, right? Even though the demigods enjoy such facilities that they enjoy in the higher planetary systems, they are always conscious about God. They might have a slight mixture of so-called enjoyment, but they always want to or ready to render service to the Supreme Lord. Sometimes they make we see throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam, we see sometimes Indra also makes some mistakes. But when Brahma comes and chastises him, or when Krishna comes and chastises him, then he realizes his mistake and then he's ready to serve the Lord. In the whole Leela of the Brahma Vimohan Leela, or we can even take the Indra's, Govardhan Leela. In all of these situations, we see that how, they are ready to subordinate. It's not that they are revolting against the Lord. Whereas the nature of the demons is that they revolt against the Lord. They challenge the Lord. That is the difference in nature. They also know that it is the Lord only who can maintain, which means, why is Prabhupada saying this? Even though they are demigods and their responsibility is for them to provide for everybody in the material world, they don't see themselves as the provider, but they see only the Lord as the provider, which means they only see themselves as an agent of the Lord. So the Devatas know their position very clearly. So this verse is very significant, right? That's why Srila Prabhupada quotes, Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadhati Kaman. He says, Eko, the Lord is one, Bahunam, but his creations are Bahu, many are there, right? Or you can also take it another way, Eko Bahunam, or that one person expands into many in the forms of the so-called Devatas and everyone, and then he provides Vidadhati Kaman. This means Vidadhati means he gives. For what? Kaman, for the various desires, to fulfill the desires of all the living entities. What does it mean? It means that he fulfills the desires of the devotees and he also fulfills the desires, including the demons. The demons, even though they reject the Lord, but who is providing for them? It is the Lord who is providing for them. They don't realize that. They cannot accept, they think that Krishna is their enemy. But ultimately, their life also depends on Krishna because he is the one who is making everything function even within their body. So the modern theory that starvation is due to an increase in population is not accepted by the demigods or the devotees of the Lord. The devotees or demigods are fully aware that the Lord can maintain any number of living entities, provided they are conscious of how to eat. If they want to eat like ordinary animals who have no God consciousness, then they must live in starvation, poverty, and want, like the jungle animals in the forest. The jungle animals are also maintained by the Lord with their respective foodstuffs, but they are not advanced in God consciousness. Similarly, human beings are provided with food, grains, vegetables, fruits, and milk by the grace of the Lord. But it is the duty of human beings to acknowledge the mercy of the Lord. As a matter of gratitude, they should feel obliged to the Lord for their supply of foodstuff, and they must first offer him food in sacrifice and then partake of the remnants. So, whatever we are partaking or accepting, we should be conscious that we have to thank the Lord for what he has given. But more than that, Krishna says, if you offer it to me with love, he accepts it, not just as a thank you, but he actually starts to enjoy it. Just give me one moment, please. Sorry, back. So as a matter of gratitude, they should feel obliged to the Lord for their supply of foodstuff. But one step above that is to actually not just be thankful for what he has given as a reciprocation, but also actually offer it to him. Because Krishna likes the loving offering. So we see two verses in the Bhagavad Gita. In the beginning, Krishna talks about E bhajanti atma karanati, people who are simply partaking food or simply eating sin. But if they offer and take it, then they are not affected by sin. That is being thankful, showing gratitude to the Lord, so that they can be devoid of the sin. But then Krishna later says that what he loves most is when patram pushpam phalam toyam yome bhaktya prayachati. But when it is offered with love, not just as a matter of duty, right? If somebody is coming and doing something, you give him a 1 rupee. But somebody did not do anything to you, but you go that side, you give him a banana. Let's say your security in your building or whoever it is. This is an offering prasadam. I have one banana, give it to him. How happy he'll be. Because he didn't do anything, but without that you gave him. What happiness that it gives. Of course, in Lord's situation, Lord is not looking for that happiness because he is Atmaram. He is by self happy. He is always, happy. That is a stage. But still he looks for that loving offering from that devotee. That is the difference. In Bhagavad Gita 3.13, it is confirmed that one who takes foodstuff after a performance of sacrifice eats real food for proper maintenance of the body and the soul. But one who cooks for himself and does not perform any sacrifice eats only lumps of sin in the shape of foodstuffs. Such sinful eating can never make one happy or free from scarcity. Famine is not due to an increase in population, as less intelligent economists think. When human society is grateful to the Lord for all his gifts for the maintenance of the living entities, then there is certainly no scarcity or want in society. But when men are unaware of the intrinsic value of such gifts from the Lord, surely they are in want. A person who has no God consciousness may live in opulence for the time being due to his past virtuous acts. But if one forgets his relationship with the Lord, certainly he must await the stage of starvation by the law of the powerful material nature. One cannot escape the vigilance of the powerful material nature unless he leads a God conscious or devotional life. Right? So it's very important that we see the presence of the Lord or the connection of the Lord in everything that we do and rise it to the level where we understand the relationship, and that is our real eternal identity and relationship, and act accordingly. If we do not, then the Lord will remind us. By how? By giving us starvation or scarcity. But for one who is surrendered, there is no scarcity. Right? He says that, what does he say? Yogakshemam Vaham. He says, I provide what he lacks, I preserve what he has. So how can there be scarcity? So he says, for a devotee who has surrendered to Krishna, there is no question of scarcity. He keeps giving. We might look like it is scarcity because in our mind, our conception of what we want is very different from what Krishna knows that what you really want. So we think, oh, Krishna has not given me this. Krishna has not given me that. I'm chanting for so many years. Why Krishna is not giving me this? No, Krishna knows what is right for you. At that time, he's just waiting. Right? So the point is that when we have surrendered to Krishna, Krishna has a very clear statement that he has given, that Yogakshemam Vahamya, that whatever is required for that living entity, he provides and he preserves what you have. So he doesn't take it. So that is the point that one has to understand. Text number 50. Tvang naha suranamasi sanvayanam Putasta Adya Purusha Puranaha Twang Idheva Sakyam Guna Karma Yonau Retastu Ajhayam Kavim Adade Jaha.
Hare Krishna, Gandhar pronounce.
Harigopal, yes, go ahead.
Hare Krishna. Tvam, your lordship, nah of us, Suranam of the demigods, Asi you are, Sa Anvayanam with different gradations, Bhutastaha, one who is unchanged, Abhyaha without any superior, Purushaha the founder, Purana founder, Tvam you, Deva, O Lord, Shaktyam unto the energy, Guna Karma Yonau unto the cause of the material modes and activities, Retaha, semen of birth, Tu indeed, Ajayam for begetting, Kavim the total living entities, Ada they initiated, Ajaha one who is unborn. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Translation: You are the original personal founder of all the demigods and the orders of different gradations, yet you are the oldest and are unchanged. O Lord, you have no source or superior. You have impregnated the external energy with the semen of the total living entities, yet you are unborn. Purana Purusham Navayavvanam cha Vedeshu Durlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto. No. He is Purana Purusham. Right? What is that? Ishvaraha Paramah Krishna. No. Anadiradi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. He says that. Right? He is Purana Purusha. He is the oldest. He is unchanged. He is Adi. He is Adhyam Purana Purusham. Navayavvanam cha. He is unchanged. He is always in Yavvana. He doesn't become old. Whereas we, Kaumaram Yavvanam Jara. Tata Dehantara Prapti. Whereas Krishna, no. He is unchanged. Navayavvanam cha Vedeshu Durlabam. So, O Lord, you have no source or superior. You have impregnated the external energy with the semen of the total living entities, which means the semen of the total living entities, which means the Mahat Tattva, right, by which he creates this entire material manifestation through the manifestation of the Mahat Tattva and this material world. He is given the seed, and yet you are unborn. The Lord, the original person, is the father of all other living entities, beginning from Brahma, the personality from whom all other living entities and different gradations of species are generated. Yet, the Supreme Father has no other father. Every one of the living entities of all grades up to Brahma, the original creature of the universe, is begotten by a father. But he, the Lord, has no father. When he descends to the material plane out of his causeless mercy, he accepts one of his great devotees as his father or keep pace with the rules of the material world. But since he is the Lord, he is always independent in choosing who will become his father. For example, the Lord came out of a pillar in his incarnation as Nrsimhadeva. And by the Lord's causeless mercy, Ahalya came out of a stone by the touch of the lotus feet of his incarnation as Lord Sri Rama. He is also the companion of every living entity as a super soul, but he is unchanged. The living entity changes his body in the material world, but even when the Lord is in the material world, he is ever unchanged. That is his prerogative. Right? Says, he is the father of all, beginning from Brahma, the personality from whom all other living entities and different gradations of species are generated, which means he is the Aham Bija Pradhapita. Yet, he has no father. And Srila Prabhupada gives the example how that when he comes to this material world, it says that he is born, he appears, but then he is Aja. What does it mean? It means that he can choose who his father and who his mother is. And he is not born like any other living entity. So when he came in front of Devaki, he came in his 400 form as Lord Vishnu. He says, oh, my dear Lord, we want you as a little baby. And then he changed himself to a little baby. But he is again the same original personality of God. And then Srila Prabhupada gives the example of Nrsimhadeva. Who did he accept as his mother and father? Simply a pillar. Right? The pillar became his mother, from whose womb he appeared as Lord Nrsimhadeva. And then he said, not only him, if he wishes, he can even make another living entity be born of a pillar like him. And he gives the example of Ahalya, where Lord Rama put his lotus feet and Ahalya came from simply a stone. That is the nature of the Supreme Lord, that he is ever independent. He is Swarat. It's completely independent. He is not dependent on. So that is his prerogative. As confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 14.3, the Lord impregnates the external or material energy, and thus the total living entities later come out in different gradations, beginning from Brahma, the first demigod, down to the insignificant ant. All gradations of living entities are manifested by Brahma and the external energy, but the Lord is the original father of everyone. The relationship of every living being with the Supreme Lord is certainly one of son and father, and not one of equality. Sometimes in love, the son is more than the father, but the relationship of father and son is one of the superior and the subordinate. Every living entity, however great he may be, even up to demigods like Brahma and Indra, is an eternally subordinate servitor of the Supreme Father. The Mahat Tattva principle is the generating source of all the modes of material nature. And the living entities take birth in the material world in bodies supplied by the mother material nature in terms of their previous work. The body is a gift of material nature, but the soul is originally part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. So the soul is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. The body is a gift of the material nature, but how does it gift that body? It depends on our previous work and our material nature. Hrideshe Arjuna Tishtati Brahmayan Sarvabhutani Yantra Arudhani Maya. By the influence of Maya, the material nature, he puts us in a particular body. Yantra Arudhani Maya. So the body is a gift of material nature, but the soul is a part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. 51. Tato vayang mat pramukha yad arte bhabhubimatman karavama kingte tvang nah swachakshuhu paridehi shaktya deva kriyarte yad anugrahanam. Can one of you quickly read?
Shall I read again?
Sure.
Hare Krishna. Tataha, therefore, vayam, all of us, Mattaha, cosmos, Mahatattva, yet arte, for the purpose of which, Bahu Vima, Atman, O Supreme Self, Karavama, shall do, him what? Te, your service, Tvam, yourself, Nah, to us, Swa Sakshuhu, personal plan, Paridehi, specifically us, Saktya, with potency to work, Deva, O Lord, Kriya Arte, for acting, yet from which, Anugrahanam, of those who are specifically favored. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. O Supreme Self, please give us who are created in the beginning from the Mahatattva, the total cosmic energy, your kind directions on how we shall act. Kindly award us your perfect knowledge and potency so that we can render you service in the different departments of subsequent creation. So here we see that one, he is the seed-giving father and he has given everything. But then he also gives the manual by which each of these living entities have to perform or execute the subsequent creation, the Devatas, right? So here he says, please give us what? Your kind directions on how we shall act. Award us your perfect knowledge. So which means they are asking for the knowledge, the potency, and the directions by which they can render you service in the different departments of subsequent creation. So the Lord creates this material world and impregnates the material energy with the living entity who will act in the material world. All these actions have a divine plan behind them. The plan is to give the conditioned souls who so desire it a chance to enjoy sense gratification. But there is another plan behind the creation to help the living entities realize that they are created for the transcendental sense gratification of the Lord and not for their individual sense gratification. This is the constitutional position of the living entities. So even though the Supreme Lord creates this sthana, there are two sthanas that are created. One is the body that the Lord gives, which is also a sthana, which means the soul gets a body to live. And then the body needs also a planet, a place where he can live, which is, one of the 14 planetary systems. He is situated in a particular type of body. Apparently, he gives this body. Why? Because we chose that we wanted to enjoy separately from the Lord. So he gives this body. But that is not his actual plan. His actual plan is that, yes, you wanted to enjoy, so he gave you the body. But his plan is something different. What is that different plan? The plan is that how he can redirect you back home, back to God. That is what he is looking at. So we might have a plan that I want to enjoy and that we have a free will to enjoy. Yes, it is okay. But ultimately, it has to be that we have to become a servant of him. That is our only. So here, that is what Srila Prabhupada explains. To help the living entities realize that they are created for the transcendental sense gratification of the Lord and not for their individual sense gratification. This is the constitutional position of the living entities. The Lord is one without a second. So one might question, oh, so the Lord is playing a trick with us. Actually, he's created this for our enjoyment. He should give enjoyment, but he is trying to trick us back. Well, he knows ultimately it is a waste of time because enjoyment is not here. You can go on for eternally millions and trillions of lifetimes, but you can still not find the so-called happiness that you're looking at here. That he already knows because he can see everything to the future. So he says, why waste time? Come back here, because here there is real happiness. That is what he is. Just like, I always give this example. The son who has wandered away from his rich father. He thinks he can find happiness somewhere, but he is going to take a long, long time standing on his own to find his happiness, which he can never find. So the father is saying that I have already earned so much for you. Why don't you come and enjoy with me? All that you need to do is simply be the son and not, wander away from being my son. That is all is required. So there's a verse in the Bhagavatam which says, all that you need for you to enjoy your father's property is to just identify yourself as the son. Similarly, all that you need for you to enjoy eternally is to identify yourself as the eternal son of the eternal father, that is Krishna. That is the only identity that is required. If you simply identify yourself as the eternal servant of the Lord and the eternal son of the eternal father, then you have everything to enjoy, which means you go to Goloka and you enjoy everything, including going on top of your father, right, which you cannot enjoy here. So that is the secret that Srimad Bhagavatam gives. So this is the constitutional position of the living entity. The Lord is one without a second, and he expands himself into many for his transcendental pleasure. All the expansions, the Vishnu Tattvas, the Jiva Tattvas, and the Shakti Tattvas, the personality of Godhead, the living entities, and the different potencies, are different offshoots from the same one supreme Lord. Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati. So the Jiva Tattvas are separated expansions of the Vishnu Tattvas. And although the Jivas have different potencies, they're all meant for the transcendental sense gratification of the Supreme Lord. Some of the Jivas, however, wanted to lord it over material nature in imitation of the lordship of the personality of Godhead. Regarding when and why such propensities overcame the pure living entities, it can only be explained that the Jiva Tattvas have infinitesimal independence, and that due to misuse of this independence, some of the living entities have become implicated in the conditions of cosmic creation and are therefore called Nitya Baddhas, or eternally conditioned souls. We already discussed this before. It's going to be the end of the chapter, so I'll just finish this. Yeah. The expansions of Vedic wisdom also give the Nitya Baddhas, the conditioned living entities, a chance to improve, and those who take advantage of such transcendental knowledge gradually regain their lost consciousness of rendering transcendental loving service to the Lord. So, who take advantage of such transcendental knowledge, which means simply to the process of hearing. That is where we started today. Right? The demigods are amongst the conditioned souls who have developed this pure consciousness. So what differentiates the normal human being from the demigods? The demigods are in a pure consciousness, and how they have gone to that pure consciousness, they have developed it. How did they develop it? By the process of hearing the service. Okay. So such mixed consciousness puts a conditioned soul in the position of managing the affairs of this creation. The demigods are entrusted leaders of the conditioned souls. As some of the old prisoners in government jails are entrusted with some responsible work of prison management, so the demigods are improved conditioned souls acting as representatives of the Lord in the material creation. So it's a beautiful example. Sometimes there are students in the class, but some students can be monitors, there can be leaders, and they can be given. Why? Because they are slightly responsible students. They will take proper attendance, they will help the teacher, and so on and so forth. So similarly, the Lord gives responsibility. And Srila Prabhupada is giving examples. Even though they are prisoners, they will be given some responsibilities because they're obedient prisoners. Right? Like that, the obedient living entities are the demigods who are always ready to serve the Lord. Right? Such demigods are devotees of the Lord in the material world, and when completely free from all material desire to lord it over the material energy, they become pure devotees and have no desire but to serve the Lord. Therefore, any living entity who desires a position in the material world may desire so in the service of the Lord and may seek power and intelligence from the Lord, as exemplified by the demigods in this particular verse. One cannot do anything unless he is enlightened and empowered by the Lord. Even if one is a demigod, if he is not enlightened by knowledge, empowered by potency, then they cannot do anything. All recollections, knowledge, etc., as well as all forgetfulness are engineered by the Lord. Dada, what is that? Mata smritir jnanam apohanam cha, he says, right? Who is sitting within the heart of everyone. The intelligent man seeks the help of the Lord, and the Lord helps the sincere devotees engaged in his multifarious services. The demigods are entrusted by the Lord to create different species of living entities according to their past deeds. They are herein asking the favor of the Lord for the intelligence and power to carry out their tasks. Similarly, any conditioned soul may also engage in the service of the Lord under the guidance of an expert spiritual master, and thus gradually become freed from the entanglement of material existence. The spiritual master is the manifested representative of the Lord, and anyone who puts himself under the guidance of a spiritual master and acts accordingly is said to be acting in terms of buddhi yoga, as explained in 241 Bhagavad Gita. Vyavasayatmika buddhi ekehe kurunandana bahushakahi anantascha buddhayo avyavasayanam. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the third canto, fifth chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Vidura's Talks with Maitreya. Harihi Om Tat Sat. So we will begin with chapter 6 in our next class. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.